Welcome to the Primal Endurance Podcast, where we shake up the status quo of ineffective conventional endurance training. Enjoy an assortment of expert guests, where we cut to the chase and give you the unfiltered scoop on what it takes to go long, have fun, and stay healthy. And now, here's your host, Brad Kearns.
There's a special kind of person. Sometimes she's not all she seems. She only sees what she wants you to see. And before you really know, it always seems to go back and forth. Hey, Brad Kearns, your host, making a cameo. Not really making a cameo. Been seeing a lot of me lately. Doing questions and answers, because we have so many wonderful questions. We will have an assortment of guests coming soon to mix up the show content as we always have through time. But right now I'm really busy putting together the final touches on the Primal Endurance online multimedia digital course, where we're bringing the book to life and giving you a comprehensive educational experience with dozens of videos from the world's leading experts and top athletes on all the matters that were covered in the book, bringing that book to life and broadening your educational experience and putting much more into there. I hope you'll enjoy it. It'll be the best way to go all in with the primal endurance approach and lifestyle. But for now, we had many thoughtful questions coming through, and I will jump right into those. Here we go. So Gary, high school coach, another high school coach question. Love these. I train 800, 1600, 1300 meter runners. I believe I overtrain my runners, says Gary. Parents want to have pasta feeds the night before and carbo load. I let them do it and try to at least change it to taco night or maybe chili. Something easy, not perfect, better. So he's got some challenges with his youth runners eating the standard American diet, and then also wondering why he's following the conventional training approach for high school runners. He says lactic acid training and VO2 training is the thing right now. Intervals. Yeah. I'm curious, if you were a distance track coach, what would you do? Can primal endurance fat-based training work as a half measure? My guess is that as a high school coach, you have little to no control over what the kids eat and do outside of practice. And I wonder if can the training principles work on a standard high-carb American diet? So some diet questions as well as the training questions. The diet questions first. Yeah, you have very little control, but you can certainly say your piece and educate the kids and bring in a guest speaker. I'll come talk to your high school kids, man. I'll set them straight about all that sugar they're pounding. They'll wake up when they're 30 years old and feel old with creaky joints instead of feeling good and young and preserving that beautiful, healthy and growth experience in high school of pursuing endurance goals and hopefully making it a lifelong habit. So yeah, the diet thing, you have a lot of influence. You spend a lot of time with the kids, so you can certainly talk it up, bring in some healthy snacks, and definitely with the parents. I mean, you're the boss of the program. So, when you organize those carbo feeding nights, you can put some rules up there like, hey, I work hard training these runners. They work really hard. I don't want them eating crap, so we're not going to have apple pie and ice cream the night before the big race at the cross country invitational. You know, put some rules and guidelines down, make people think a little bit. As far as the training, I answered this question on another show about the really disappointing mainstream approach to training young runners. And I believe the top priority for if you have the good fortune to work with young runners is to make sure that they enjoy it. They progress at a steady, comfortable rate. They don't overdo it. They don't succumb to burnout, illness, injury, and things that will make them walk away from the sport before their time. Because that's a huge, huge problem, is the attrition rate, the burnout rate. Of course, it's a problem with adult groups of athletes too, but especially in high school. You get a young freshman in there. They think they're trying to have fun, do something with their buddies, and they get run into the ground. Of course, they're going to quit by the time they're sophomore, junior, or senior. So, be patient with the progress of the kids. Don't overtrain them. It's much, much better to underwork them by a little bit, and maybe they'll, perform a little bit less than their absolute maximum potential because you didn't grind them too hard in workouts. But they should be the ones governing their progress and their workload. And what I mean by that is a really talented kid who's destined for the state meet, who's destined to do great things, maybe run at the next level in college. Those kids will find their way to the front of the pack. They'll find their way to a face-to-face with the coach saying, hey, is there some extra workouts I can do because I feel fantastic and I completed the workout and I still got more juice in the tank. So those kids will take care of themselves. You're not going to ruin some kids' distance running future by undertraining them, I promise. On the other end of the scale are the kids who are maybe struggling, maybe they're not as fit as they could be going into their program experience in high school. And those are the ones that you want to baby along, not put a lot of competitive pressure on. And then all those kids in the middle that are doing their best, they show some form of enthusiasm. They might not be destined for the Olympics, but they, want to work hard. They enjoy it. They have the potential to do some good things in high school. Geez, I think that, again, just like with adults, your maximum return on investment is going to come from aerobic development. That is running the kids at a comfortable pace where they're having fun. They're not being yelled at and screamed at or having whistles blown in their ear to deliver yet another impressive interval because the coach is there with a stopwatch and wants it to be 38 seconds again to the top of the hill. That stuff should be delivered few and far between in a high school kid's workout pattern. Of course, there's so much work to do and there's so much progress to be made with form, technique, drills, even strenuous drills where they're doing high knees and butt kicks and kickouts and strides and learning how to run and move the body in an efficient manner, even at high speed. There's all types of opportunities to do that mixed in with their workouts. They're kind of fun. They're short in duration because there are some intense things. So it breaks up a workout rather than just putting in the miles and saying you're going to go run 6 more miles today and 6 more miles tomorrow. They can do some fun stuff like fartlek and unstructured, high intensity training where they play follow the leader or something like that, or you put them through drills. But the general pace of the general training session for high school athletes is too strenuous. And I see this throughout the high school spectrum. Fast kids, slower kids that get tired and burnt out and injured, ill and sick. So look at your program. See if kids are getting sick, see if kids are getting injured, see if kids are quitting after 1 or 2 years experience, and recalibrate everything so that the strain and the stress of the training is much, much easier and the kids are having much more fun. You can have a water balloon fight day where they're running around the field and doing some short intervals without even thinking about it. And those can be the bread and butter of the high school training program rather than those puke intervals with the stopwatch going. That can come much later. And like I said, the kids that are destined to be at the top and head on to college, they have plenty of opportunity to work hard and do whatever structure stuff they want to do. But I'm talking about addressing the larger population of kids who are basically out there trying to have a social experience, trying to have fun, trying to get in shape, and trying to build on competitive success to pursue more competitive success. Okay. Hopefully that's enough of an answer there. And with the food stuff, man, stick your nose into that matter and tell the parents and tell the kids, look, when you're on this team, of course, we're only working out 1 to 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, whatever. It's a 10-hour-a-week commitment, but it really is around the clock lifestyle commitment when you're being a long distance runner in high school if you want to do it right. And that means you got to watch what you're eating and possibly, very likely, depart from the mainstream patterns of your peers with their indiscriminate eating habits. I mean, most of the high school programs, you have to sign a pledge that you're not going to do drugs or alcohol. So why not throw in junk food and highly refined polyunsaturated oils into the pledge and say, look, I'm going to be healthy. Otherwise, why bother running all those miles? All right, that's my take there, Gary. Good luck with your team this year. Thanks for writing in and thanks for spending time coaching young kids. Here's Andrew with a quick question on base building. I'm trying to train under my MAF heart rate, which is 133. I get super frustrated constantly jogging and walking and paying attention to the heart rate. It just takes all the fun out of running. I'm not going to tease you, but I will say we've heard that from so many people, right? It just takes all the fun out of running. It's a whole different experience to tone down that competitive intensity or that unbridled enthusiasm for heading out on the trail and accelerating and going at whatever pace you feel like, to hearing the stupid watch beeping and having to constantly back off and constantly pay attention. I totally hear you, and I appreciate that, Andrew, and you're speaking for many, many people when you say that. However, I've found that I really enjoy just going on a long walk where my heart rate stays way below 133, usually between 95 and 120. During my base building phase, can I just replace super slow runs with long walks or hikes? And will these walks help to improve my aerobic function for running and racing later in the year? Great question. The answer is absolutely, positively, of course, that low-end aerobic exercise makes a tremendous contribution to your competitive success at higher and higher and higher intensities, all the way up into the anaerobic intensities when you're doing a challenging race like a sprint triathlon or a 5K or things where you're really opening up the throttle. What's happening at those lower end aerobic intensities is you are still recruiting these energy producing aerobic enzymes, muscle fibers, to get you through a walk or a hike. And those same energy producing enzymes and muscle fibers are being recruited when you are going faster. The analogy of the cruise ship with the 12 turbine, the giant engines that'll send it out on the open waters when they're going from Los Angeles down to Puerto Vallarta, and they're cranking overnight, going 20 knots or 30 knots or whatever the cruise ship goes, with all 12 turbines cranking full out anaerobic, right? But when they're in the port and they're going super, super slow and drifting into their dock, only 2 of the 12 turbines are activated because those are the ones that'll help the boat move very slowly into position. However, in the open water, when the 12 turbines are cranking, those first 2 are still cranking, right? So when you're training that cruise ship, when you're moving that cruise ship in port, going really, really slow and only using a portion of all your engine power, you are still contributing to what you're doing when you're going full throttle in the ocean. Get it? So when you're going at heart rate of 95 to 120 and you're comfortable and you're just walking because that's what your heart rate dictates, this stuff, the stuff that you're training, is going to kick in when your heart rate is going 140, 150, 160. And in fact, when I was a professional triathlete, my aerobic maximum heart rate was 155 beats per minute. I was a young guy and I could go at a pretty fast pace at 155. So it was a pretty decent workout, actually, if I was pegging at my aerobic max. I could run 6-minute miles for 5 miles. That was at my best. I could climb up a hill at a pretty aggressive pace and then pedal really fast down the hill because, again, we're talking heart rate. So I'd be going on a bike ride where I'm going, 20 miles an hour or something that's, really impressive and hitting that 155. Now, if I had tried to do that every day, it would have been pretty strenuous, pretty difficult, especially the running pace. So I did a vast majority of my training at heart rates way, way below my aerobic maximum heart rate. I would run many times with a heart rate of 115 to 130, again with an aerobic max of 155. That's 40 beats below my aerobic max. Same with the biking. I do a lot of biking at 100 to 120, just pedaling on the flats at a decent pace, whatever, on the bike trail, 17 miles an hour, something that's still giving me a workout, but it's not nearly as strenuous as a still aerobic workout up at 155. And this contributed greatly to my ability to build and build and build and improve my aerobic efficiency, such that when I did ramp it all the way up to 155, or when I did a race at 175 to 185, I felt comfortable and strong rather than tired, stiff, sore, and broken down. So it's absolutely okay to do a good portion of your aerobic workouts well below your aerobic max. Now, if you're not super conditioned or you're older or whatever, that's going to make a jog, a usual jog, into a walk, which is absolutely fine. That's just where you're at. Or on the bike ride, it's going to be a really slow pedal or whatever. You're still getting that training effect. And it's interesting to note that because here's some other variables. Heat, altitude, things like that make the workload much more difficult for your body. For example, I was down in Mexico, Puerto Vallarta, that's why I mentioned it before, recently, and going for a jog and realizing that sticky summer humidity, going very, very slow jog was still bumping me over my aerobic maximum heart rate. Where here in California climate, in the morning in temperate weather, I could go along at a pretty nice, smooth running pace at my aerobic maximum heart rate. So that same effort up here, where I'm running along and cruising and looking good to all the onlookers, transported down to Puerto Vallarta, big trouble, man. So basically, if you're trying to do a workout on your tropical vacation, it's going to turn into a brisk walk on the flat surface, even if you're a runner at your normal, more ambient, more pleasant temperatures. Very interesting. Same with altitude. So you have to recalibrate and readjust your perspective every time you set foot out for a training session to realize what's the environment influence going to be on you. Hey, what's a cup of coffee influence going to be on you? You drink a cup of coffee before your workout, you're going to jack up your heart rate artificially due to the central nervous system stimulant. And guess what that means? Your heart rate is possibly going to be higher at a slower pace because of the effect of the stimulant. So everything factors in, and heart rate is the best way to get a read from your body at what kind of exercise intensity you're working at, whether it's in the hot weather, the altitude, going up a hill, for example. Walking up a hill is just as good an aerobic session as jogging on the flat or opening it up on striding on the downhill. And that's why Maffetone recommends doing downhill running when you're doing your aerobic training, because it gives you that chance to work on leg turnover and more explosive, faster running, but the effort is easy enough to stay aerobic. Interesting stuff. So yeah, you can replace those long walks and hikes and enjoy yourself and not worry so much about constantly toning down your running pace. Patty bought the book Primal Endurance, attempted to follow your guidance. I could not stay below 123 as my heart rate jumped up to 176, even when I was walking hills or even on the flats. She went to a cardiologist and discovered a left bundle branch block in my heart, which throws off my heart electrical system, as well as an aortic valve leak. So 57 years old, never had any other medical issues. Maybe the heart rate training was impetus to get you in to see the cardiologist. So that's good news, huh? My doc says I can continue training even with these conditions that throw off a normal heart rate reading. How do I stay in my aerobic range without relying on my heart rate because it's unreliable because she's getting these spikes due to her unique condition? I try to run with my mouth closed and breathing through my nose. Any other suggestions would be greatly appreciated. Obviously, this is a question that's not relevant to a ton of people that have heartbeat irregularities showing up on the readout that's going to affect their training. However, it's interesting that you brought it up because a lot of people have irregular heartbeats, arrhythmias, things like that. And these will also show up on heart rate variability tests. So the heart rate variability, testing the intervals between your heartbeats to determine your state of recovery or state of cardiovascular fitness is great if you have a normal heartbeat, if you do not have any conditions that will throw off a normal readout. Same with training according to the beeping watch and calculating your 180 minus age training heart rate. Those are really effective for almost everyone. But if you have some issues, if you have irregular heartbeat, things like that, what you're going to get on heart rate variability test, for example, is a really super high score. I put my dad on there, 94 years old, and he's got some arrhythmias. He's had them for a long time. They're not a health concern, but his HRV was off the charts, like an Olympic athlete. So the 94-year-old guy was up there with, the leading Ironman trained people with their massive cardiovascular systems and, fine-tuned to the high world level. But it was because there were so many irregular beats on his readout that the heart rate variability score came out high. So in general, these are good tools to use if and only if you're free from medical conditions. So in Patty's case, yeah, you have to default to the subjective ways to gauge your training. Breathing through your nose is great, although you can fudge that and still get into a workout level that's a little too stressful. So if you're really sucking air through your nose and trying to keep the pace, settle down. So we'll call it breathing through your nose comfortably. And then another subjective one that I always like to mention is, look, when you finish that workout, you should come home feeling refreshed and energized, not feeling a little bit droopy or a little bit craving sugar or feeling like if you sat down in a chair, you could stay there for an hour. That's an indication that your workout was overly stressful. Even if you were going at 180 minus age calculation and you're one of those unique individuals that has a crappy heart rate monitor, because I saw a couple other questions saying, my heart rate skips around all the time when I start working out. It's like, hey, put more spit on your pads or don't buy the cheap model, go get a good one so that it actually works. And sometimes when the battery gets weak, I find, even in polars, which are long been regarded as the best unit, if the transmitter battery, the chest strap battery, something that you can't change, you have to basically junk it and buy a new one. If that's starting to get weak, I found that some of my heart watches aren't working so well all of a sudden, and I'll blame it on the chest strap. So we're doing the best we can to get that accurate heart readout, but you also throw in those subjective factors and consider those all the time, that you feel refreshed and energized after workouts, not craving sugar. Good luck with that, Patty. Jonas from Sweden, from Sverige. Jag heter Brad. I'm trying to figure out a good way of combining endurance-based building periods, staying at or below max aerobic heart rate, with strength training. Please note that my goals are not strictly endurance-based, and I'm doing mostly CrossFit, heavy strength training, as well as running, and looking for the most efficient way of combining high-intensity strength training with my endurance. I'm open to implementing the annual periodization formula suggested in the book, but I still want to continue doing strength training. Even a CrossFit person can benefit from a base building aerobic period each year. Absolutely. And now it's finally getting into, I'm listening to podcasts and hearing about CrossFit folks that are realizing that they're deficient on the endurance component of their training, because the CrossFit Games, where you're doing multiple days in a row, or even when you're doing a 20-minute competition, 20 minutes is a long time, man. I don't care how buff you are and how many pull-ups you can do or muscle ups from the rings. After a few minutes kick out and you've already, done all your explosiveness, we're going to see what your endurance is like. The endurance is going to be exposed in a 20-minute maximum effort CrossFit style performance test or competition. So, obviously the specific training, if you're training for the CrossFit Games, that's your end all. Doing CrossFit style workouts that are patterned after the games will be really helpful. But a period of the year to back off on your routine in the gym, where you're doing strenuous workouts several days a week, and taking that period and just jogging or just doing gentle rowing or cycling or whatever cardio that you enjoy, and making sure that your heart rate is at or below maximum aerobic for a defined period of time. I would suggest 2 months. If you can't stand that, at least a month or 6 weeks, where you're just being gentle to your body. You're letting your muscles and your stress hormones recover. You're not stimulating that fight or flight response all the time. And you're just building a little bit of endurance base. And it's a really good word to say base at this point, because then you're going to throw in all these incredible efforts and things that you aspire to, like doing handstand push-ups and crazy stuff like that, on top of the base. But at least you have the base to make it through, hey, even an hour workout where you're just working on form and doing gymnastics types training, but you're in the gym repeatedly doing something that maybe not as super strenuous, but your longer duration workouts, you got to have that endurance base. All the workouts must be at or below aerobic maximum heart rate. Otherwise, you're just going into a chronic overtraining pattern. And I say the stress of CrossFit and the high intensity nature of that cardio is plenty of high intensity cardio training effect. So a CrossFitter who just did walking and hiking and really slow cycling would experience improvement in performance due to increased endurance. And of course, the super low intensity workouts will not compromise your performance and recovery when you're doing CrossFit workouts. So I'm advocating for an annual base building period. And I'm also suggesting that if you're really enthusiastic about that high intensity stuff, that you throw in some hikes, some walks around the neighborhood. If you're really fit, some very slow jogs, and include that into your commitment to fitness. You'll have great benefits, and there'll be no price to pay in terms of recovery, throwing off whatever you like to do in the gym. Now, to Jonas, I would guess that a typical person interested in broad fitness goals, like both CrossFit as well as being competent in endurance, is at a high risk of overtraining due to their broad ambitions. That's a big ambition, right? If you're just focused on endurance and you're not in there doing these crazy CrossFit workouts, maybe you're at less risk. If you're just a CrossFitter and all your workouts are that focused, and you're not putting in hours and hours of chronic cardio like a triathlete might be, you're not crossing over into that. But these people that want to have it all, there's a little bit of strategy involved to set yourself up properly. So another comment would be, don't be afraid to back off on both of your training modalities. This is a question that Mark can relate to in particular, because he likes his paddling, which is full on endurance. his hiking, and also the ultimate frisbee game, which has a high endurance component but has a little bit of intensity thrown in. And he also likes to go and set records in the gym doing the rope machine or doing the heavy weights. So he has broad-based fitness goals, and that's kind of been the essence of the Primal Blueprint philosophies, to cover those broad bases. But don't overdo it. Don't get so enthusiastic thinking that with your obligation to lift heavy things, sprint, and put in a lot of frequent movement, that can all add up to overtraining, just like any other equation, just like the CrossFitter that's going 5 days a week instead of 3, or just like the triathlete that never looks at a weight or even does a push-up, but is putting in 17 hours a week of chronic cardio. Okay. Sound good, Jonas? Thanks for writing in from Sveti. Eh? Mike says, do you think bouldering at the local rock climbing gym is a good form of cross-training during aerobic base building? And number 2, I listened to another podcast hosted by a very well-respected running coach. Okay, well, that distinguishes him from me, huh? In the Southern Cal area. And he stresses the importance of working on running mechanics and particularly cadence. He suggests you train at 180 revolutions per minute. I decided to give this a try during one of my long aerobic runs, and the results were pretty hilarious. It literally felt and probably looked like I was jogging in place, trying to keep that 180 RPM up at my maximum aerobic heart rate of 142. Have you ever experimented with trying to keep cadence at a slow pace? And if so, any recommendations? He's got a third question in, but let's hit the first two also first. Bouldering at the local rock climbing gym, that's cross-training, that's play, that's being that counts as moving frequently. Good, fun stuff to do. There's that risk that your hobbies might compromise your aerobic base building. I think that's what the question is alluding to. And as we wrote about in Primal Endurance, us triathletes in Los Angeles, coached by Mark, we would be so glad that the season was over. We could hang up our road bikes and our swim goggles and just relax and go out there and mountain bike in the mud with these very, very strenuous workouts. And we didn't realize that this was not really an off season. It was just another way to blast our heart with a different form of training. And just because it was mountain biking, just because it was not the exact same bike that we're used to working on, it still all adds up into the overtraining component and the stress-rest balance, okay? So bouldering, if you're going extreme bouldering and you're doing competitions where your heart's beating through the roof as you're trying to race your buddy up to the top, things like that, that's different than going out there and enjoying yourself. And whenever the heart rate goes up over your aerobic maximum, you don't need to put the beeper on when you're having fun bouldering, but absolutely support all those kind of fun cross-training endeavors as long as they don't have a chronic element to them, okay? So the cadence running, it seems like a good idea, and the running coach is very well respected. So what am I going to say? To try to increase your turnover. Because when you think about increasing your turnover, what happens is you're more likely to balance your center of gravity over your feet. You balance your body weight over your feet rather than the huge and very common mistake that recreational runners make, even joggers, even people going slow, but especially people trying to put in some heavy work. And that is to overstride and have a braking effect with each forward stride, a heel striking pattern, and also kind of falling backwards and moving your center of gravity back and forward rather than being centered over your feet. So if you think about fast turnover, bicycle cadence, bicycle pattern, and we'll have lots of good videos on this in the Primal Endurance course to teach you to run with magnificent form. One of the ways is to increase your cadence and get rid of that plodding, long duration of your foot on the ground, losing all your explosive power, rather than let's pretend that you're riding a bicycle and you're pedaling over a hot lava surface that you don't want to touch, okay? So you're running with really fast on the ground and really fast off the ground, explosive force on each stride, even if you're jogging, rather than just lumbering along and collapsing your weight into the ground and letting your pelvis and your hips kind of collapse into the ground. So the cadence can help that. But have I ever tried to count my cadence while I'm running? Not really. I'm not too concerned with doing that rather than just thinking about the form, especially if the results are pretty hilarious and the cadence is too brisk for such a such a slow pace workout because you're trying to honor maximum aerobic heart rate. So slow down your cadence. There's no magic number here that 180 is the end all and that's what all runners should do at all paces. That's ridiculous. But we want to see you exhibiting good form, keeping your center of gravity balanced over your feet, right? And your feet coming on and off the ground really quickly with nice, efficient strides. How's that? And then number 3 question. I've been taking HRV readings for a few months, heart rate variability, and my LF, my low frequency, is consistently really high, sometimes 4-to-1 over HF. One time it was 7-to-1 last week, which would indicate I'm very stressed. However, my HRV scores are consistently mid to high 80s, so that tells me I'm in a good state to train, right? Ideally, what should I be looking for in the LF-HF ratio? I heard it should be 1-to-1. I read that online somewhere. I also read some other stuff that LF is useless and you should just use HRV score. Anyway, I'm 38. I want to know what to do. We're still learning all the details about HRV. Basically, and you can go back and listen to the Rhonda Collier podcast. She's the founder of Sweetwater Health, which makes the Sweetbeat Life iPhone app to guide HRV, and she got into the details pretty well. But when we have our HRV score on a 0 through 100 scale, that's measuring the beat-to-beat intervals between our heartbeats, the greater variation, the higher the score, and the better your score when you're counting it on that 1 through 100 scale. So 80 seems like an impressive score, and like he writes, seems like I'm good to go with a score of 80. Important thing to note here is that your HRV scores are very personal, individualized. So what you want to do is track your baseline over time, okay? Whatever it is, if it's 55 to 60 and that's just who you are, but that's your normal baseline, and that means you're feeling good, that's great. It can't be disparaged as a low score and you need to get your butt in shape or you need to rest more. It's just very individualized. And if you're up at 100, like my dad I was mentioning, it's all individual. But generally speaking, the fit athletes will have a higher score on a 0 through 100 scale, and a feeble person who's out of shape will have a lower HRV score that is a more metronomic heart rate because they don't have a well-trained cardiovascular system. For you and your individuality, if you have a baseline score in the 80s, and then you're coming up with 65, 71, 66, that's an indication you're below your baseline, means that your cardiovascular system is overstressed, tired, still recovering, and it's a sign that you need to back off. You can back off on your training. That's the HRV component. Very simple, 1 through 100. Then for more nuance, we have these measurements of the low frequency activity and the high frequency activity. And those are believed to correlate with the disparate branches of the autonomic nervous system, the fight or flight, or the sympathetic branch, and the rest and digest, they call it, the parasympathetic branch. So the parasympathetic activity is believed to be associated with HF, high frequency, and the sympathetic is believed to be associated with LF. So LF, high LF could mean high stress. High HF in relation to LF, of course, always. We have the absolute values to deal with again, but the ratio could be an indication of your state of stress in the nervous system. So if you're showing high HF scores every day and half value for LF. So if your HF is 1,000, your LF is 500, that could be a suggestion that you're in a calm, relaxed state first thing in the morning, which, by the way, is the only time I recommend taking HRV readouts. So you want to have a consistent reading every day where you're very relaxed in bed, first thing in the morning. You relieved yourself for sure, nothing else going on where it's going to mess with your score. And that's when you get your HRV score and track it. So if you're seeing HF predominating over LF every single morning, that's great. And then one day your LF spikes or it matches your HF or it goes above HF. That is a pretty good indication that you're stressed, you're in sympathetic fight or flight, dominance or activity, and you want to govern your training and your lifestyle decisions accordingly. However, I talked to Brock Armstrong, expert on this subject too. He's been on the podcast several times. You can search his shows because we did talk some HRV, and he was saying that his baseline is a higher LF and a lower HF every single day. So he's either a super constantly stressed out dude, which he's not. He's totally chill. He lives an exceptional balanced lifestyle. He works for Dave Asprey at Bulletproof now. And it possibly could just be that's the state of his nervous system in the morning. And it might not be anything to totally concern yourself about, Mike, unless you see changes in the patterns over time. So if that LF and HF are consistent every single day, that's great. But in your letter, you said that usually LF is 4-1 over HF. One reading last week was 7-1, indicating you were very stressed. That's probably accurate if it goes up from 4-1 to 7-1. And the other thing to think about is, hey man, are you in a high stress state in your general life right now? And have you been so for the last 6 months because you got this super intense job or a terrible commute or something going on that's keeping you pegged in a high stress situation? And if you were to go on a 17-day all expenses paid trip to the Ritz-Carlton in Maui, which we're giving away to one lucky listener, just kidding. If you were to go on a killer vacation where all your worries and cares were put aside for a while, would you see some HRV readings that were dramatically disparate? Would that HF spike up and predominate over LF? And if you see any of those types of readings, then you got to sit back and look at your whole lifestyle big picture here. I have noticed I've been doing HRV tracking for, I think, two and a half years straight now. Is that right? A long time anyway. And my HF usually is a 2-1 predominating over the LF in the morning. And I have seen times where LF spiked way above HF, and those were indeed times that correlated with high stress periods in my life or not recovered yet. So I really respect my ratios and my balances, but those are my unique individuals. So I think that's more important than making a generalization. Even with saying HRV in the 80s, wow, that's awesome, go train. It just depends on how it's looked for you over the past 6 months. A long answer getting into HRV, but we haven't talked about that in a while, so hopefully that was helpful for you guys. And if you want to get started, the Primal Beat HRV, Sweetwater Health makes a custom branded app just for Primal people. It's $10. You can go on the Apple iTunes store and purchase that just for Apple right now. They're working on the other platforms. And there's several other HRV apps that work well for the Android and other platforms. Lead is one of them. But I love Primal Beat HRV. I was part of the customization process so we could get exactly what we wanted and make it simple for our Primal Endurance followers. So it's called Primal Beat HRV. Go get it in the App Store. You get the app, $10, put it on your iPhone. And then you need a Bluetooth enabled strap. Okay. So that's going to cost you $60 for a puller or a Wahoo. Is that what it's called? Wahoo chest strap. You can find those on Amazon.com, just the strap. Or if you want to buy a whole watch, so you can have a training watch as well as the strap. But you need a Bluetooth enabled strap. Not all the straps work. So make sure you're getting the right strap. There's more details when you look at the page on the app and the specs, or you can contact Sweetwater Health directly for more details. But you have a simple $10 app, works on your phone. It stores everything. It uploads it to the cloud, so you can have a full readout of all your HRV reports that you've done over the years at a glance. Great stuff. And it's a wonderful way to track your state of recovery and help you make informed training decisions above and beyond just tracking the morning resting heart rate, which has been the gold standard for so long. HRV provides much more detail and nuance. So that's really good stuff. I think we have a wonderful show there wrapped up. Thanks for watching on YouTube, or thanks for listening on your favorite podcast delivery. This is Brad Kearns for the Primal Endurance Podcast. And guess what? We have a new way to submit your questions. It's a clever, handy form that will also capture your email address so we can update you about the Primal Endurance online course. So go to primalblueprint.com/endurance. primalblueprint.com/endurance is where you submit your questions. And also, if you've been listening to the show, you're getting a lot of value out of the Q&A. Please let me know what you like to hear, what kind of guests you like to hear from. We're lining up guests. And also, if you would, take the time to go to iTunes and leave a review, however many stars you like. 5 is good, but tell the truth, be honest, and help us spread the word to other endurance athletes that deserve the wonderful approach and the less stressful, more fun, more successful primal endurance strategies as opposed to the chronic patterns that are so common out there amongst endurance athletes. So thanks for listening and watching. This is Brad Kearns. Until next time, again, primalblueprint.com/endurance to submit your questions to the show.
Hi folks, Mark Sisson here, and I'd like to tell you about my biggest undertaking yet, the Primal Health Coach program. My mission is to create a global network of Primal Health Coaches to help transform the health and consciousness of our communities into ones of optimal wellness and happiness. Becoming a Primal Health Coach empowers you to take your primal passions to the next level and embark on a career you love, inspiring others to live lives of vitality and lasting wellness. If you dream of a career in health coaching, but have been held back by worries, such as the investment of time and money, then I encourage you to hesitate no longer. Health coaching is the fastest growing specialty in all of coaching, and we've created an online education program that allows you to learn from the comfort of your own home and at your own pace. We also have payment plans available, so you can start immediately for just $1 down. The world needs Primal Health Coaches to provide a blend of ancestral wellness solutions to the modern health crisis. The world needs you. Are you ready to become one of the world's most trusted, experienced, and knowledgeable health coaches? To learn more about this online certification program and to take the first step toward a career you love, visit primalhealthcoach.com and subscribe.